Shirley and Neal Fox grow a beautiful garden. One thing missing: irrigation. Long before drought response was on everyone's radar, they'd learned water conservation techniques when Neal served as an Air Force officer stationed around the country. So in 2008, when they retired to San Antonio, watering restrictions were no big deal. Their challenges? Drainage, caliche, and deer.
We resisted putting a fence across our backyard because we so liked the view into the green space, but ultimately we built a fence that works quite well. It keeps the deer out and we can see through it. And out front we have an accommodation with the deer where we put plants out there that generally they won't eat, or they'll just nibble on from time to time.
They've also got rocks galore.
I own two digging bars, one a 4-footer and one a 6.5-footer. To plant a 4-inch potted plant takes me maybe half an hour in this caliche sometimes, depending if I hit a rock, well, which you do every time.
All those rocks that are around the beds, those all were dug up when we were planting. We brought in 3 truckloads of soil to do the beds that are around the fence line.
Along with the rocks they unearthed, they sourced others from friends with leftovers. They'd actually bought the house in 1995 when Neal was stationed at former Brooks Air Force Base. Before he was transferred 2 years later, Shirley planted a tiny fig tree, still there when they returned in 2008. But the garden was a far cry from today.
First of all, it was pretty stark and kind of grim. None of the plants were from around here, except there were Texas mountain laurels that were there originally, and the oak trees. So I got plants from my friends, and then I just figured out what would work and what wouldn't work. I'm an interior designer, so I didn't ever really make a plan, but I could see what I wanted.
One thing they both wanted was to control rainfall runoff.
We're at the bottom of a little hill here, and water flows down the road, and actually we are the pass-through for that water.
With gravel and dry creek beds, they direct water underground or to the creek behind them. They created levels too as small check dams. The berms offer visual appeal as well as good drainage. Neal builds them up with pebble-sized stone.
I built a base and then eventually work in sand and dirt, but it drains very well, and that's important when you're putting in those kind of plants, is to make sure they drain well.
One of the biggest challenges is we go through 2 years or more where it almost never rains. And then sometimes we've had just massive amounts of rainfall, and that's why we put them up on the mounds.
Shirley is an artist as well as a technical designer. Her training, although an interior design degree, focused on art. So I think that served her well in designing our gardens.
I liked to mix, when there's like the agave, and then mix a soft plant with it so that it doesn't just look like an agave sitting on a mound in a pile of gravel. There was lantana, but it died back in the winter, so now I'm using damianita. That stays green all year. One of the biggest things about the front was I wanted it to look like a landscape. It was difficult to do because the one side can get 10 to 12 hours of sun along the driveway, and there's the reflected heat. And then at the same time, the other side is deep shade. Just recently, I had lorope growing through the whole thing as basically a lawn. And so I've taken that out and put in Berkeley sedge, and then I discovered Weberville sedge.
One of their backyard rock finds inspired a low-profile disappearing fountain, a watery welcome mat for wildlife.
And by the way, it's almost always filled with rainwater. We catch rainwater, and I truck it up there in my wheelbarrow and dump it in. Shirley has set up destinations throughout the garden that you'll go to this one area and it has this type of a theme, and then another area might have another.
I like to sit out in the garden, so we have a number of different sitting spots and benches.
One of their favorite spots is a perch high above the back garden. It's here that Shirley cultivates her collection of container plants, some overwintering in the warm garage.
Most of the color I keep up here close to the house where I can see it.
Her flowering plants stand out better these days since they gave the cedar red deck and railings a new, subtle persona.
As soon as we started painting the gray, it just went right into the trees. The same thing with the color on this wall. I wanted a wall that would disappear into the backyard.
For another bird's eye view without being pestered by mosquitoes, they built a screened room.
My dad was a master carpenter, and my uncle built houses, so I'd work for my uncles and my uncle in the summers, and I learned all the trades.
Actually, the deck ended where the screen porch is. He built the platform, and then we built the screen porch on top of the platform.
Yeah, we built Shirley actually helped me hold up some
Literally
some
picture me
timbers.
on the other end of a board on a ladder holding it up. We're not afraid of anything, and we just figure it out and do it. There's a hotel over there, a high-rise hotel just across the fence, and so we built that, and now we can sit out on our deck or in that porch and have privacy. The door on that, we purchased that at a garage sale for $2. so it has that old screen door creak.
They even salvaged an old military aircraft seat with room for a parachute, just in case Shirley wants to dive into the garden.
We go to some resale shops around town and find little pieces that we put here and there in the garden, and that adds interest.
So that means no ordinary shed for the Foxes. The one they built looks as if they'd plucked it off a dusty roadside where an icy Coke bottle and mustardy hot dog await within.
I didn't want to have just a shed. I wanted to have it look like it belonged here in Texas, that it had that old-fashioned look. And I wanted it to be a destination, not just a shed.
You might want to describe your tank garden.
When we first built it, the tank wasn't in the middle of it. I thought I would find something else to do with that. We moved it all over the yard trying to find a place for it, and then one day I just pulled out all the plants that were in the middle of the circle garden and put it in there.
Drought prompted the new design and back.
During the drought in 2011, that all just died out. It just turned to dust, and there were just a couple of scraggly weeds in there. I wanted a parterre type garden that we could walk through to get to the shed or other parts of the yard. I really like the native grasses, like the muleys. They don't need water. Right now in the fall, they look wonderful.
The butterflies love Shirley's garden. They're just thick out there.
Wildlife also head to the partially shaded niche against the side of the house. Different textures thrive here against gently billowing buffalo grass.
We never water the buffalo grass, ever.
Under the live oak trees, they're sprinkling in sedges. This soothing park-like destination blends seamlessly into their greenbelt. When needed, they can water once a week, a long-term restriction in San Antonio. Mostly, they rely on rainwater collection for thirsty plants and wildlife. Adopting water conservation doesn't mean living with a boring landscape.
The types of plants that can be grown here in San Antonio is quite large. But Shirley keeps coming back around to the native Texas as the core plants. The worst part of the summer, this yard is quite colorful.